Welcome to the Q1 Buck Poll. I'm Tim Hart with Mike Big Buck Hoffman. We got a great show this week. We're going to be talking to the DNR. We're going to talk about the history and the heritage with Kevin Frailey. And you know, Mike, the DNR has been around for 125 years, and they're celebrating this year.
125 years. A lot of changes have happened during that period of time. They probably went from the muzzle loader to real guns now.
That would be the flintlock.
Exactly.
We also have Kevin Kech on our show today, and he's going to be talking about his hunting trip with the Make-A-Wish Foundation through the Tony Semple Foundation. Tony Semple, a former Detroit Lion football player, passion for hunting, passion for kids to get them out in the woods.
And Kevin Kech, he was passionate about deer hunting, you know, and you might have disabilities, but I'll tell you, you'd never see it in his eyes, you'd never hear it in the tone of his voice. He's excited to be a hunter.
And one of the regular features that you're going to be seeing here on the Q1 Buck Poll is Tony LaPratt. Tony is a renowned whitetail hunter, predominantly throughout the state of Michigan, but really all over the country. He's got Ultimate Land Management and the Whitetail Boot Camp. Well, he's going to share with us, about just a little philosophies, but each week he's going to give you some tips on how you can be a better hunter.
Yeah, you know, he's a former graduate of ours, and I guess you categorize him as a whitetail freak, man. That guy, he knows his stuff. And he took advantage of taking our agriculture classes, and he put it to good use. And I think he's really done some productive work in the area of food management and just managing gear in general.
We will have some great features each and every week right here on the Q1 Buck Poll. And we have bucks that have been entered into the contest, so we'll be featuring hunters from around the state of Michigan. Stay with us. You're watching the Q1 Buck Poll. The Q1 Buck Poll is sponsored by these participating businesses who support the great outdoors in Michigan. Back here on the Q1 Buck Poll, one of my favorite features, and I think one of the favorite features of all the hunters around the state of Michigan, is taking a look at who harvested what, where.
Well, we've harvested a few deer this week, Tim. I know it's been a little slow, but the weather has been a little warm. You know, the rut is just around the corner, maybe a couple weeks away, so it is going to get better. But let's start out with Jared Roper. He happens to be from Midland, Michigan. Shot himself an 11-pointer. His score was 40.25. Then we had Chuck Galdi from Brown City with an 8-point buck. His score was 38 3/4. Francisco Garza from Saginaw, Michigan with an 8-pointer. His score was 38.5. And finally, Emily Carpenter with a 10-point buck from Clio. The score was 37.
And you know, we're getting more and more girls and women into the Q1 Buck Poll.
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal growth. I guess, you know, the people that are producing the products, the shirts, the muzzle loaders, the bows, they all have the little tinge of pink in it. And I'll tell you what, they're probably smiling all the way to the bank because the women hunters have grown in population.
Our next segment is our regular feature with the DNR. Today we're going to talk with Kevin Frailey. He's going to talk about the DNR celebrating 125 years. Today on our DNR segment, we've got Kevin Frailey with us. He is the Section Manager for Education Services with the Department of Natural Resources. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Tim.
We are going to be talking about history. The last time you and I had a chance to talk, we talked about getting kids outside in the outdoors. Yep. But let's talk a little bit about the history of the DNR. 125 years. Now, was Michigan the first one to have a conservation officer out there?
Yep. It's 125 years since Michigan hired the first conservation officer, so that's kind of the celebration of the year. And we were the first to have a CO. You'll see some stuff that there were some COs or game wardens, of course, back then, like a Yellowstone National Park, but that was years later. But for a state to actually establish a position to have a guy go out and check a fish and game stuff, Michigan was 1887, which is amazing. You know, that's only 22 years after the closing of the Civil War.
Exactly right. Which that's when you talk about the history and in schools, and it's just kind of like, wow. That wasn't that much longer after the fact.
Right.
Talk to me about what Michigan looked like back then when it comes to conservation.
Michigan was a mess. If you remember your logging history, from 1860 to about 1900, Michigan was just totally wiped out. It was logs from Michigan and timber went all across the country, helped rebuild Chicago after the Chicago fire. So Michigan it's almost like you woke up one morning and there were no trees. It was all stumps, slash fires. The rivers were all screwed up because the logging, of course, stirred up sediment. And it was a really disaster area back in those years.
So what turned the tide then to get us on the right track?
Sportsmen, of course. Way back then, there were sportsmen who became concerned and started establishing clubs, and they lobbied government actually to start doing something. And some of the forerunner of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was something called the Commission on Fish and Fisheries, created in 1871. They started turning the tide. Of course, Teddy Roosevelt comes in 1901 and totally changes the face of conservation in America. And we really became to have a conservation ethic over the next few years. The DNR, actually, or Department of Conservation, 1921 established. MUCC, they have an anniversary coming up here, 1937. DU 1937, so then through the 30s and on, a huge legacy there.
Now, the funding for the DNR, predominantly all the money from people buying license, that's what funds the DNR. So if there are less people buying license, that's less money for the DNR, which means less officers or less staff.
Exactly. Tim, a lot of your viewers already know that we're funded, just like you said, by sportsman dollars. But most people, if you stop people on the street, if you ask 9 out of 10 people in the street, they'd probably think their taxes support the department. Right. And a statistic I always like is when you look at the general fund or the tax support that we get as an agency, it boils down to about $1.40 a year for every man, woman, and child in Michigan.
I mean, from fishing to hunting to wildlife and nature to what's being done with a lot of the different parks and state parks out there, really has been a push. And I think that, I would stack Michigan up against any state in the country and say what a beautiful outdoors we have.
We do, and people, have supported over and over. When you think of the initiatives, even going back to bottle bills and some of the park proposals and things over the years that have been on an actual initiative that people could go out and pull the lever on. They've always been great supporters of the outdoors in Michigan, so that's the upside. That's tremendous.
All right, so I'm not a hunter. I'm not going out in the woods. Does it help if I buy a license?
Absolutely. For years, I speak to a lot of groups that aren't necessarily hunters and fishermen. I do a lot of teacher education programs and things like that. And I've always said at the end, when people always ask you, what can I do? And I'll say, well, go buy a hunting license, go buy a fishing license. They'll say, wait a minute, I
don't even go in the outdoors. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but when you explain that how that, again, the general fund story, that we don't really get any general funding, or very little, that they can help support our initiatives by buying those licenses. It makes a difference.
A great interview and a great organization. We've had a chance to talk to the DNR over the last few years. And Mike, one of the things I like is they're trying to get the word out and let people know what's going on and get people involved with the great outdoors here in Michigan.
Yeah, and technology, was being able to do Facebook and just go to web pages, websites, have all increased and improved the educational value to what the DNR has to offer to the general public.
Stay with us when we come back. We got more bucks here on the Q1 Buck Poll, plus we're going to talk to Kevin Kech about his Make-A-Wish hunt, and then we got Tony LaPratt. You're watching the Q1 Buck Poll. Time now for our sponsor spotlight here on the Q1 Buck Poll. Tim Hart with Randy Van Dam. Randy, how are you today?
Good, Tim. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Wonderful. Here in Kalamazoo, and I tell you what, we're going to talk about some long guns and some handguns here at DNR Sports Center. And Randy, let's start with some of the single shots. You've got some guns here that are really becoming the popular models.
Oh yeah, there's some of these single shot and bolt action models are kind of becoming the norm now. They're long range. The new Sabbats that we got to shoot, guys are shooting 200 yards with them, scoping them up and letting them fly. It's really a trend that we're seeing, and we carry all the H&R models. They have thumb hole type stocks. They have regular stocks. They got the heavy barrels, and Savage bolt action, kind of the same thing. They play on the accuracy and of the bolt action rifle, being the most accurate type of rifle. Well, and it's, you know, now they're doing it for shotgun, and they make it in camo stock. It's a real popular thing.
All right. And what's the next gun we're going to take a look at?
This is old tried and true trusty Mossberg right here. I think it's the best value in the market right now for guns. You know, they come drilled and tapped. A lot of them are ported up here so they kick a lot less. You can get them camo, you can get them regular, you can get them with scope mounts, rifle mounts, combos. You can get it any way you want. It's really a good, accurate gun.
Now let's talk about some of the handguns here. I know you got a great selection of handguns, a couple of SIGs here.
We carry a full variety. I got this out here because it's a unique concept. It's real good. It's a frame and a full gun, and the guts interchange. So when you buy it, it's called the SIG twosome. This one's a 9mm, but you get two guns in one. So you can kind of interchange it back and forth in one unit. It's a neat concept, and they're real reasonable. We have a great deal on them going right now. We bought a bunch of them.
And if you have any questions about you know, license or anything like that, I know there's a number of classes you guys hold here, CPL classes.
Yeah, we do CPL classes at least once a month type thing, and we'll probably around deer season knock it off just a little bit because we're all going to be out in the woods, but we'll be hot and heavy all winter long on those. So.
All right, talking guns here at DNR Sports Center in Kalamazoo. Randy, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Tim.
Back here on the Q1 Buck Poll. Now you can see all of the bucks that are registered in the contest by going to q1buckpoll.com. Plus, we're now utilizing Facebook. We've got our email blasts out there. If you're not signed up to get some of the email blasts, you can go to q1buckpoll.com and get all signed up. But you know, Mike, the entries are coming in. Coming up, I'm going to be at Richardson's Meat Processors in Linden, and that's November 3rd. I'll take my camera, so I want to talk to some people out there. Bring your racks, and let's talk deer hunting.
Well, that's just about the peak of when the rut starts to get interesting, so maybe you'll have a lot of deer run in that day. And speaking of deer, let's start out with John Grewe with an 11-pointer from Commerce Township with an 11-point buck. His score was 40 3/4. Then we had John McCulchek from St. Charles with a 10-pointer. His score was 40 3/4. And finally, Thomas Herlin from Jackson, Michigan with an 8-pointer. His score is 40.63. And speaking about deer, we got a special guest with us this week, Tim. My buddy from the Career Center, Kevin Kech, goes out to the Make-A-Wish Foundation and gets himself a buck. You got a great interview with him.
I'm now talking to Kevin Kech from Bronson. Kevin, welcome to the Q1 Buck Poll. All right, Kevin is with us here to talk about the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and in particular his hunt that he was able to go on a few years back. But Kevin was successful this year in the youth hunt, and we had him featured on a previous show with his big buck. But Kevin, tell me about your hunt with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. How did it all come about?
Oh, it was once in a lifetime wish. I would never thought I would have been able to have the chance to do it. I heard from my mom. She was on the phone with Ron Lanford from the vet in Coldwater. Mm-hmm. And he said that there was a Make-A-Wish hunt for kids with disabilities, and man, it was the best time of my life, and I'll never forget it. And it was up in Muy Grande Ranch and Resort, and it was me and 2 other boys, and there was supposed to be 4 of us, but the other 2, they couldn't make it. But it was once in a lifetime.
And that was through the Tony Semple Foundation up in the Detroit area, right?
Yep. Tony Semple is an ex-Lions player.
He's got a passion, I will tell you this. I've talked to Tony before. He has a passion for the outdoors, but he has a passion for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and helping get kids out there to hunt. Now, how did it work? You were taken out on ATVs. Were you on ground blinds? How did you hunt?
We were on a ground blind. It was like a shanty type shack. I had a .243 rifle that they supported everything, clothes and everything, and had an 8-point come out, and there was 2 of them, and sitting there, we were debating on which one to go after, and then it got chased off by a real mature buck. Mm-hmm. And then it was getting pretty late, and there was about maybe up to 16 bucks out in the field. And
holy cow.
Yeah, it was amazing, and took them at, I think it was 256 yards.
Quite a shot. Now, did any of the other kids get a deer too?
Yep, they both one got a 10-point, and the other got an 8-point also.
Now, you suffer from muscular dystrophy. How does that affect you when you're trying to go out in the woods and that sort of thing, or just in general?
It's a big toll on me, but I've had it my whole life. I've had it for 14 years now, and it's never slowed me down. I have a passion for deer hunting. I love it, and I'm never going to stop doing what I love to do, and I'm just going to keep going at it and keep slaying some big deer.
All right. What do you like most about being outside?
I love the wildlife, just having something to do with it and just being able to, you know, spend my time out in the woods and being able to have that time with my friends and family.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for
All
having
right.
me.
Kevin Kech from Brunson, talking about the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the hunt that he went on through that organization and the Tony Semple Foundation. There's information online. You can check it out if you have a youngster or somebody that's in your family that would like to have a hunt donated to them. Maybe that's their big wish, to get out there and do some deer hunting or whatever kind of hunting it is. Make sure you go online and check it out. Kevin, again, thanks for being with us. I'm Tim Hart. You're watching the Q1 Buck Poll. Well, we're going to have a special guest each week with us here on the Q1 Buck Poll. Tony LaPratt with Ultimate Land Management and Whitetail Boot Camp is going to share some of his hunting tips and secrets so that you can become a better hunter.
Well, you know, if you can take advantage of things, take advantage of Tony's knowledge, it will make you a better deer hunter.
And it will help you get bucks like we've got right here on the Q1 Buck Poll.
Troy Setzer from Coldwater, Michigan with an 8-point buck, scoring 42 1/4. Robert Walter from Saginaw, Michigan brings in a 9-pointer. His score was 41 3/4. And Garrett Rosich from Saginaw, Michigan, also bringing in a 7-point buck. The score was 41 1/2 points.
And you can get your bucks and does registered at any location across the state, including all of your Auto Value and bumper-to-bumper auto parts stores, along with Greenstone Farm credit stores. We've got locations, and they're all listed online.
Well, we've made it easy for people. Just get those bucks in there. Even at the Career Center, we got our own little buck poll edition of the Q1 Buck Poll, and we can bring your bucks right there and get them registered as well if you happen to be in Branch County.
All right, so Tony LaPratt has what I would call a museum at his Whitetail Boot Camp. Let's go out and talk to him about his operation. I'm now talking with Tony LaPratt from Ultimate Land Management and Whitetail Boot Camp. Welcome to the Q1 Buck Poll, Tony.
Thank you.
We're going to be doing regular features with Tony, talking about how you can become a more successful hunter. And as we talk about that, Tony, let's find out a little bit about Ultimate Land Management and the Whitetail Boot Camp. Let's start with the land management part.
Well, Ultimate Land Management is where I go to the people's properties. I travel all over the country. We've been in 24 different states. We've done over 1,000 properties in the last 5 years. And this is where I go to a property and show a person where to build buck beds, doe beds, fawning areas, food plots, stand locations. Really, we cover the whole gauntlet of deer hunting.
And when you go there, you're walking the land itself. You're not just looking at a topographical map or anything.
We cover every square inch of the property. I mean, we get down into the swamps. Everything matters, and especially the smaller the acreage, the more detail everything has to be on that property.
Now, when we take a look at the facility we're in right now, this is the Whitetail Boot Camp, and people
Yes.
can see all throughout the room here that you had a lot of success. Explain the Whitetail Boot Camp.
Well, the Whitetail Boot Camp is where people come here to our facility. We call this the Whitetail Habitat Research Center. Basically, I do all these crazy studies on the environment and also basically the habitats of the whitetail deer. What do they prefer? And guys come here to learn how to build all the buck beds, doe beds, and actually how to become a great hunter. And I teach people how to be true woodsmen instead of the gadgets out there. So I'm a guy that teaches people how to go back 200 years and learn everything about the whitetail deer. And that's what we specialize in.
Well, one of the things I think that is similar, whether you're in the South, Alabama, some of those states, or whether you're in Wisconsin or Michigan, you know, a lot of times people don't know where to set their stand. Just a quick tip on what's the number one thing?
Well, the number one thing is if you're really after big bucks, you have to understand where he lives. And here's just something simple, guys. A buck spends 70% of his life on a belly. He's more like an old male dog. He lays around all day long. At night, he's like that male dog. He wants to get up and mark his territory. But during that time of daylight hours, he's only using 20% around his core area. So out of that remaining 30%, 70% is on his belly, 20% is in his core area. Most people's stands is outside that 90% zone. So like me, I control the buck beds. When I'm deer hunting, I'm over 90% of his life moving around me. My neighbors, less than 10%. Most people are in their 10% zone. So you got to find out where the buck is living and move in as close as you can.
Well, one of the things I like about it is if you come to the Whitetail Boot Camp, you're really coming into a whitetail museum and artifacts and rocks and all the trees from the state of Michigan. You really have a beautiful, I want to say museum, but I know it's your house.
Yeah, well, I tell everybody it is like a museum because it's my personality. When you look around, I live deer 24/7, and this is me, and this is my wife. She's been with me ever since we've been little kids, and this is our lifestyle, and so we build everything around our passion.
So Tony, what are some of the things that we're going to talk about this year on the Q1 Buck Poll?
Well, we're going to be talking about many things, and what I'm trying to do this year is cover things whether you own land or don't own land. And so some of these are enter and exit. Very important, and a lot of people have problems with this. Another thing, are you shooting does out of your buck stands? And this is ruining a lot of deer hunters out there. The other thing we're going to be talking about is scouting. I'm also going to be talking about stands a little bit on how to properly set them up. And we're going to be covering many little things that will help you guys be a little more consistent on big deer.
Well, and we're happy to have your opinion on the Q1 Buck Poll.
Well, thank you.
right.
Happy to be here.
Well, we tried to show you as much detail as we could of the Whitetail Boot Camp and Ultimate Land Management with Tony. And I tell you right now, the detail is so fabulous around his house. People should go to the Whitetail Boot Camp just to see the place.
Yeah, you know, it's a beautiful place, but speaking of details, that's why Tony is successful. If you look at any of the key ingredients about great deer hunters, they pay attention to the details, and it's a year-round activity, and it's the detail that produces the big bucks out there.
And we will have him on each and every week, so we look forward to talking with Tony. Well, Mike, I think that's going to do it for this week. Again, we remind you, bucks and does, get registered. You've got a lot of time all the way through December 31st. You can register your rack at any of the locations. Go online. We've got them listed, and then we'll see your buck in pictures. And if you got a great story or if you got some great hunting footage, we'd like to use it right here on the Q1 Buck Poll.
And you know, the weather's getting better, the leaves are coming down, the rut's just around the corner. It's an exciting time to be out in the woods.
I can't always stand it.
I know. We're ready to go. Right now, let's leave.
Big buck offer gets me going. I tell you, we are going to go out in the woods, and we've been out there with no luck, but hopefully we'll have something down on camera for you to take a look at. For Mike Big Buck Hoffner, I'm Tim Hart. Thanks for being with us this week on the Q1 Buck Poll. Remember, whenever you're out in the woods, be safe.
You weren't on your game.
I was on it so far.
Kind of missed it just ever so slightly.
Every once in a while, you have a stumble. Because if you didn't have a stumble, you would, you'd be a
yeah, well.
So.
You know, I remember the first shows we did. I think we probably have a record. We probably went like 10 in a row and never had a retake. Does that mean we're getting older and more senile? I'm not sure what's happening to us, buddy.
Yeah. Well, okay, more senile. I may be aging, but I'm not senile.
Can't see anymore, so the prompts aren't there to be read anymore. I mean, we just got to do this all by memory.
And you're doing a fine job.
All right, thank you.